My ex-wife used my name to open credit cards, racking up $150,000 in debt. When collectors came, she claimed I forced her to do it. I almost went to jail. But I hacked into her email and found every message she sent planning it all. Yesterday she was arrested. Today she's texting me, "Please don't ruin my life." My name's Martin and I'm 34. I'm not even sure how to start this without my hands shaking. I guess it begins with the phone call. The one that blew up my life. I was at work, late evening, trying to finish a report when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to answer. A gruff voice said he was from a collections agency, demanding payment on $23,000 of debt from a Chase card I'd never heard of. My heart dropped. I told him there had to be a mistake. He laughed, told me my social security number was attached, my address, everything, and that this was just one of 5 accounts. I couldn't breathe. I hung up and just stared at my computer screen until my boss tapped my shoulder, asking if I was okay. I told him I felt sick, because I did. On the drive home, my mind was spinning. I kept going over the possibilities. Identity theft? A data breach? But how could someone get my info so perfectly? I parked in my driveway, staring at the house I'd once shared with my wife, Mia. We divorced 2 years ago. It was messy, ugly. But I thought we'd at least moved on. I pulled up my credit report on my phone before I even got inside. There it was. 5 maxed out credit cards. All opened in the past 18 months. All in my name. And that was the start of the worst month of my life. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about Mia. I didn't want to believe she could do this. But deep down I knew. She always had control issues. Money was always a fight. She hated that I wouldn't buy her designer bags, a new car. She once screamed at me that I'd ruined her life by being cheap. The next morning I called every bank listed. I explained that I never opened the accounts. Some reps were sympathetic. Some cold. All of them told me the same thing. Fraud investigations take time. And if they found I did open them, I'd be responsible. I felt like I was drowning. Then came the knock at my door. 2 police officers. 1 woman, 1 man. Calm but firm. They asked if they could come in. My legs felt like jelly as I led them to the kitchen. The female officer pulled out a folder. Inside were screenshots of texts. My name on them. Messages saying things like, "You better get those cards or else and I'll ruin you if you don't pay." They said Mia claimed I'd forced her to open the accounts. That I'd threatened her. That she was a victim of coercion. My ears were ringing. I told them it was a lie. They said they were just gathering information, but if they found probable cause, I could be charged with fraud and domestic intimidation. Up to 15 years in prison. I watched them leave. Then I threw up in the sink. I called my mom. She cried when I told her. She offered to send money for a lawyer, but I told her to wait. I needed to find proof first. I started looking through old emails, bills, anything that might help. But I hit a wall. Then I remembered Mia's email password. She'd used the same one for everything when we were married. Our wedding date. I tried it. I was in. And what I found made me feel like I was watching a horror movie about my own life. There were dozens of emails to her friend Amanda, talking about how she planned to open cards in my name, how she'd forge my signature, how she'd play the victim if it ever came back to her. Lines like, "I'll just say he made me do it. He always looks guilty anyway. And if he fights it, I'll cry abuse." They always believe the woman. I sat there shaking, scrolling, screenshotting everything. Hundreds of messages. Dates. Details. I felt sick, but I also felt a spark of hope. Proof. The next morning I called a lawyer. His name was Mark. He listened quietly as I laid it all out, voice trembling. When I finished, he said one word, "Damn." He told me to send everything I had. Mark told me to forward every screenshot, every email, every scrap of evidence. I spent hours organizing everything. My hands were shaking so bad I kept hitting the wrong keys. But I got it done. Sent him a folder with over 200 screenshots. He called me back within the hour. Said he'd already spoken to a private investigator he trusted, and they were going to help build a timeline. He told me to stay calm, but I could hear the tension in his voice. He said, "Martin, this is serious. They could have taken you down if you hadn't found this." I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I kept thinking about Mia. Her smile. The way she used to cuddle up to me when we watched movies. The way she cried at our wedding vows. I wanted to believe that person was real. But everything I was seeing told me that person was a mask. That night I got a call from an unknown number. My heart nearly stopped. I picked up. "Martin, please." Mia's voice. Quiet. Desperate. "I heard what you're doing. You're trying to ruin me." I almost hung up, but something made me stay on the line. You tried to send me to jail, Mia. You stole from me. I could barely keep my voice steady. She started crying. Hysterical, gasping sobs. You don't understand. I was scared. I needed the money. I thought you'd help me if I made it look like you were responsible. I felt like I was going to be sick. I told her not to contact me again and hung up. Then I blocked her number. The next day Mark called with an update. He'd spoken to the police. He'd sent them the emails. He said the detective on my case was stunned by the level of detail Mia put into her plan. They wanted me to come in and give a statement. Walking into that police station felt like walking into a courtroom. I kept thinking everyone was staring at me like they all thought I was a criminal. But the detective shook my hand. Sat me down. Let me tell my story. I went through everything. The call from collections, the police visit, finding the emails, Mia's phone call. The detective kept nodding, scribbling notes. When I finished, he looked me dead in the eye. Martin, I'm going to be honest with you. If you hadn't found that evidence, you'd probably be in jail right now. But with what you've given us, we have enough to charge Mia with multiple felonies. I felt relief wash over me, but also this deep, gnawing sadness. This was the woman I once planned to have kids with. The person I thought I'd grow old with. I went home that night and couldn't stop pacing. I kept checking the driveway, half expecting Mia to show up with a baseball bat. Every time a car drove by, I flinched. The investigator Mark hired called me around midnight. He dug up more text messages between Mia and a guy named Derek. They were together. He was helping her spend the money she stole from me. Trips to Vegas. Shopping sprees. Hotel stays. All while collectors were pounding on my door. I stared at the texts, reading lines like "Can't believe he still doesn't know. And I'll say he beat me if he tries to go to the cops." I felt rage. But I also felt a strange, empty calm. Like the grief had burned everything inside me to ash. 2 days later, the detective called. They'd issued a warrant for Mia's arrest. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. That night, I poured a drink and sat on the couch in silence. I thought about how many times I'd missed the red flags. The way she'd lie about little things like where she'd been or how much she spent. The way she'd twist stories to make herself look like the victim whenever we fought. I realized I'd been blind. And I hated myself for it. The next morning, Mark called again. He told me Mia had been arrested at Derek's apartment. She tried to run. When the police knocked, she'd climbed out the window and was caught in the alley. She was in custody, charged with identity theft, fraud, and filing a false police report. I thought that would be the end. That I'd finally be able to move on. But then my phone buzzed. A new number. A text message. Martin, please, don't do this. Don't ruin my life. We can fix this. My hands went cold. She was out on bail. And she was already trying to manipulate me. I took screenshots of her texts and sent them to Mark. He told me not to reply. He said every word she sent was another nail in her coffin. But I couldn't stop thinking about how easily she tried to flip the script again. Like she actually believed I'd just forget everything she'd done. That day, I got another call from the collections agency. They'd seen the police report and were putting the accounts on hold pending the investigation outcome. It was the first sliver of good news I'd heard in weeks. I broke down crying in my kitchen. Just stood there sobbing with my head in my hands. I'd been so sure my life was over. Now there was hope. That night, Mia texted again. I'm sorry. I love you. We can be a family again. Then another. If you don't help me, I'll tell everyone you're abusive. You'll lose your job. Your friends. Everything. I wanted to scream. But instead, I forwarded the messages to Mark. He said they proved she was trying to blackmail me. I spent the next week gathering every piece of paperwork. Old tax returns, credit reports, bank statements. My lawyer said the stronger our case, the faster we could get the fraudulent debt wiped off my record. Every night, I fell asleep to nightmares of Mia laughing while I was dragged to jail. The private investigator kept sending me updates. Photos of Mia and Derek together. Receipts for expensive dinners, jewelry, hotel rooms. Every dollar spent was another piece of evidence. One evening, I got an email from the investigator with a subject line that made my heart stop. Proof she planned it from the start. I opened it to find emails from right after our divorce, where Mia laid out her plan to rack up debt in my name. She talked about how she'd wait until I was settled into my new job, so the collectors would find me easily. How she'd buy time by claiming abuse. How she'd disappear if it all fell apart. Reading those emails was like swallowing broken glass. I couldn't believe someone I'd loved so deeply could be so calculating. But it also gave me strength. I knew I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. She really had planned to destroy me. By the end of the week, Mark told me the DA was considering adding conspiracy and attempted extortion charges. He said the evidence was overwhelming. I thought about how close I'd come to losing everything. My freedom. My future. My sanity. And I wondered how many other people were living through something like this. How many were still in the dark, not knowing they were sleeping next to someone who wanted to ruin them. That night, I sat down and started writing everything out. Every detail I could remember. Every call. Every email. Every threat. I wanted to make sure that if Mia tried to twist the story again, I'd have a record. I was done being the victim. I woke up the next morning to a voicemail from the detective. He sounded energized, almost excited. He told me the DA had officially filed the expanded charges: identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, attempted extortion, and obstruction. Mia was facing up to 20 years if convicted. It felt like a massive weight lifted off my chest. But at the same time I felt hollow. There was no victory in this. Just survival. Later that day Mark called. He told me the banks were cooperating now that criminal charges had been filed. They were moving to clear the fraudulent debt from my credit reports. It would take a few weeks, but he was confident it would all come off. I almost collapsed when I heard that. After everything, it was the first moment I let myself believe I might actually get my life back. Then the messages from Mia started again. She switched numbers. She emailed me from random addresses. Each message more frantic, more desperate. Martin, I'll do anything. Please don't let them put me in prison. Then a day later. If you don't help me, I'll tell everyone you hit me. I'll make sure you lose your job. Your mom will know you're a monster. Each time I sent the messages straight to Mark and the detective. They told me I was doing exactly the right thing, not engaging, documenting everything. I couldn't believe how quickly Mia went from begging to threatening. It was like flipping a switch. One moment tears, the next pure venom. It scared me more than I wanted to admit. A week later, I was called to testify at the grand jury. Walking into that courthouse felt like stepping into a battlefield. I was terrified I'd freeze up or say something wrong. But when I sat down and started telling the story, it all came pouring out. The call from collections the night the cops showed up, the emails I found, the threats Mia sent. The prosecutors kept nodding. Some looked shocked. By the end of my testimony, I felt like I'd run a marathon. But I also felt stronger than I had in weeks. The next day, Mark called with the news. The grand jury had handed down an indictment. Mia was being formally charged on all counts. Derek, too, for helping her hide the money and spending it with her. I sat on the floor of my living room and cried. For the first time, the tears weren't fear or frustration. They were relief. Over the next few weeks, I started trying to piece my life back together. I met with HR at work. Explained everything. Showed them the police report, the emails, the texts. They were supportive. Told me to take whatever time I needed. I started sleeping again. Not great, but better. I wasn't jumping at every sound in the night. I stopped checking the driveway a dozen times a day. I even called my mom and told her the full story. She cried, told me she was proud of me. That she'd always believed me. The day of Mia's first court hearing, I stood outside the courthouse with Mark. We watched as she was led in, wrists cuffed, face pale. She wouldn't look at me. For a moment I felt pity. Then I remembered the emails. The texts. The threats. And the pity burned away. That night, Mia's lawyer reached out to Mark. Offered a plea deal. She'd plead guilty if we agreed not to pursue additional civil damages. I didn't want to drag this out for years. I just wanted my life back. I told Mark to negotiate a deal where she'd pay restitution for what she stole and serve prison time. A few days later, they accepted. Mia would plead guilty, pay $150,000 in restitution, and serve at least 7 years. Derek pled guilty too, getting 4 years for his role. When I got the news, I didn't feel joy. Just exhausted. But it was over. Or as over as it could ever be. In the days after, I kept getting texts from friends who'd heard rumors about what happened. I decided to tell them the truth. I shared what Mia had done, how close I came to losing everything. How I almost went to prison for something I didn't do. I was surprised by how supportive everyone was. Some told me they'd had relationships end in shocking ways too. That they admired me for standing up for myself. The day Mia was sentenced, I stood in the back of the courtroom. She looked at me once. Her eyes were empty. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just looked away. The judge read the sentence. The bailiffs led her out. The courtroom doors closed behind her. It was over. I went home, sat on my porch and watched the sun set. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe without a stone on my chest. It took another 6 weeks for the banks to fully clear the fraudulent debt. When I checked my credit report and saw it clean, I felt like I'd been given a second chance. I took a few weeks off work, went to visit my mom, reconnected with old friends, started therapy. I knew I needed help processing everything or I'd carry the scars forever. It's been 3 months since Mia was sentenced. My life isn't perfect. I still get nervous when I see unknown numbers calling. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking the collectors are at my door again. But I'm healing. I'm rebuilding. I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. If you're reading this and you're in a relationship where you feel something is off, where you're always the villain, where the truth feels twisted, please trust your gut. Document everything. Talk to someone you trust. Don't let anyone gaslight you into doubting your own reality. I almost lost everything because I wanted to believe Mia was the person I fell in love with. But people who want to destroy you can hide behind the face you love most. I've learned that love isn't supposed to feel like walking on eggshells. That trust is the most important part of any relationship. And that if someone betrays that trust so deeply, you're not weak for walking away. You're strong for surviving. If this story gripped you, don't forget to hit subscribe, like, and share. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? Your story might help someone else feel less alone.